This video contains graphic combat footage and images that some may find disturbing, and for that reason, viewers' discretion is advised. June 11th, 2003. U.S. Army Rangers from the 75th Ranger Regiment assaulted one of the largest terrorist training camps in Iraq. The camp housed a ridiculous amount of heavily armed terrorist fighters. These were not average terrorists. They were well-armed, well-trained soldiers. Unfortunately for them, the Rangers were accompanied by an AC-130 Spectre gunship, nicknamed the Angel of Death. And the Angel of Death showed them no mercy. The training camp, codenamed Objective Reindeer, was located in a river valley, about 500 feet long, 150 feet wide, and 35 feet deep, with steep rocky sides and two smaller rivers channeling into the main creek bed. Reindeer consisted of three separate objectives: Dasher, Rudolph, and Comet. On the morning of the 11th, Captain Hunter went over the operations plan with his platoon leaders. First platoon would insert via helicopters, then isolate and clear objectives Dasher and Rudolph. Then second platoon would insert by helicopters and isolate and clear objective Comet. Third platoon would simultaneously arrive in armored vehicles and establish blocking positions west of the objective to prevent any escapees or unwanted visitors. Captain Hunter and his fire support officer then finalized their plans with the 160th SOAR planners, who would be providing close air support and transportation for the Rangers. The ground assault force departed from Baghdad International Airport in their armored trucks at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and aside from having to navigate their way across several heavily damaged bridges, their trip was thankfully uneventful. They did, however, on their way link up with two M3 Bradley platoons from the Armored Cavalry Regiment in the vicinity of Haditha, and they quickly established a forward arming and refueling point near the highway. And after quickly refueling, they pressed on towards the objective while the Bradley platoons held their position and stood ready to reinforce the ground assault team if needed. Meanwhile, the helicopter assault force departed from Baghdad International Airport and flew to Al-Assad Airfield for refueling, arriving at about 8:30 that night. After refueling, an MH-60 Black Hawk failed to start minutes before the scheduled departure time. The crewmen then quickly escorted key leaders to another Black Hawk so they could squeeze in, but they were forced to leave behind the broken down Black Hawk along with an entire squad of Rangers. The helicopter assault force departed from the airfield 2.5 minutes late, but arrived on target right on time at 10 o'clock that night. But before they arrived on target, the air support overhead began hammering the objective site to try and thin out the enemy's numbers before the Rangers arrived. They started off their assault by dropping 6 Joint Direct Attack Munitions, or JDAMs, onto the objective site, and that alone is an insane amount of firepower to drop on the objective. But they didn't stop there. An AC-130 gunship overhead also did multiple passes over the target, hammering the area with its cannons. And as the first platoon of Rangers in their Black Hawk helicopter arrived on target, a pair of AH-6 gunships suppressed the surviving enemy fighters on objective Dasher. Once the Black Hawk touched down, the Rangers raced into the dusty darkness as a pair of AH-6 Little Bird gunships strafed an enemy position with minigun rounds and rockets. The enemy fighters responded by firing an outrageous amount of RPGs at the AH-6 Little Birds. One AH-6 sustained a hit directly to the nose of the helicopter, but miraculously, the rocket didn't detonate. The Rangers then ran across the jagged terrain towards objective Dasher, and just as they were arriving on target, an MH-47E Chinook helicopter touched down with the remainder of 1st Platoon, and then a 2nd Black Hawk helicopter arrived on target. Sergeant Alan White and his squad of Rangers then exited the helicopter and quickly seized the high ground overlooking objective Rudolph. And just as they secured the high ground, 2nd Platoon arrived on target, and they quickly exited their helicopters and made their way towards objective Comet. With all the Rangers now on target, the company commander, First Sergeant Philip Romer, the company's senior medic, Sergeant Brad Gillis, and one of the radio operators moved toward the smaller east to west river leading towards Objective Dasher to establish a casualty collection point. As they made their way there, two terrorists fired on them from a prone position, shooting the radio man's rucksack strap off his right shoulder but miraculously hitting him. The Rangers then immediately shot and killed the two fighters. The remainder of 2nd Platoon then moved from their helicopter landing zone into blocking positions, focusing on the river from the north and killing 3 enemy fighters along the way, with grenades and rifles. Meanwhile, the ground assault force arrived and successfully established blocking positions and mortar positions, but not without drama. One vehicle drove into a wash and had to be extracted. The mortar team switched vehicles and were set up within 10 minutes. The company executive officer radioed Captain Hunter with an update about 3rd Platoon's situation and then moved closer to Objective Reindeer, well protected by the high ground on the western side of the river. The mortar team then executed several fire missions in support of 1st Platoon along with AH-6 Little Bird gunships. Sergeant Byrne and his squad from 1st Platoon made their way to the right flank of Objective Dasher, locating a large weapons cache of about 2,000 RPGs, 50 RPK machine guns, 87 SA-7 surface-to-air missiles, and countless other types of munitions. They quickly marked the area for destruction and pressed forward. The squad comprising 1st Platoon's main effort, led by Sergeant Roger Duncan, cleared the high ground south of Objective Dasher, killing 5 combatants, and then moving into the river valley. Sergeant Bradley Talbert and his squad secured 1st Platoon's left flank and engaged the enemy from the high ground overlooking Objective Rudolph. On their way down into the river valley, Sergeant Duncan found 12 terrorists attempting to reorganize and killed them all with direct fire. A burning vehicle in the center of the camp prevented Sergeant Byrne and his squad from providing adequate overwatch, so they continued to observe and fire while they moved across the river valley to the west. As Sergeant Mark Walters and his team pushed south into the camp, Walters spotted an RPG team and shouted RPG as he fired his M4 at the enemy. But an RPG round impacted right next to Walter, blowing off his leg below the knee. In spite of his missing leg and shrapnel injuries to his elbow, calf, and thumb, Walters emptied his magazine into the enemy, killing the gunner who had just fired the RPG at him, all while shouting commands to his fellow Rangers. Platoon medic specialist Gomez was able to stabilize Walters, expertly treating his wounds under heavy fire. After Gomez stabilized Walters, several other Rangers carried him on a rescue sled to the evacuation point. Once Walters arrived at the evacuation point, the battalion tactical air controller called in the casualty evacuation helicopter that was in air loitering nearby, and within 30 seconds the helicopter landed and Walters was passed on to the care of the onboard surgeon for the trip to Al-Assad. Meanwhile, Sergeant Duncan pinpointed another fleeing RPG gunner with his infrared laser, enabling his squad and Sergeant Bradley Talbert's squad to target and kill the gunner with their M240 machine guns. Sergeant Byrne then saw a group of enemy fighters run into a field of tall grass to hide, but the Rangers were quickly able to clear the entire field by mowing the grass down with an overwhelming fire from their M240 Bravos. But just to be sure they got everyone, the Rangers then burned out the vegetation with incendiary grenades. And with the majority of the training camp now cleared, the Rangers slowed things down and began methodically searching the area for any surviving terrorists who might be hiding, as well as any valuable intel they could get their hands on. And throughout their search, they eliminated several more armed terrorists hiding inside the buildings as well as tall grass. And with the area now officially clear, the Rangers got a rough head count of just how many terrorists they had eliminated. And it was difficult for them to get an exact head count because the AC-130 gunship as well as the JDAMs had turned single terrorists into multiple terrorists, if you know what I mean by that. But the final head count came out to be over 70 hostile fighters eliminated. The Night Stalkers arrived on target at 4 o'clock in the morning and extracted the Rangers from their infiltration points. The helicopter assault force departed back to Baghdad International Airport, while 3rd Platoon and their armored trucks remained on target to conduct a sensitive site exploitation of the area in daylight, just to be sure they didn't miss anything. And that's all the information I have on this operation. If you guys want to see all the combat footage that was too graphic for me to show in this video, I have a link down in the description to my Patreon where I am posting all of that footage. And if you guys enjoyed this video, you should definitely check out this one on screen right here. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you all in the next